Tomorrow, Stormy Daniels will be back on the witness stand in Donald Trump's hush money election interference trial. It follows what may have been the most dramatic day of the trial so far, when Daniels testified yesterday in detail about the alleged sexual encounter she had with Trump back in 2006. It is the first of 4 criminal trials that were scheduled to take place this year. But given all of Trump's legal maneuvering, it is now likely to be the only one to come to a verdict before November's election. That is because Judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee who has been overseeing his classified documents trial, just indefinitely postponed that trial, citing multiple pretrial issues yet to be dealt with, mainly by her. And in the Georgia election interference case, the state's Court of Appeals announced today that it will hear Trump's challenge to the decision not to disqualify Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis from overseeing the case. That appeal could take months. And, of course, we're still awaiting a decision from the U.S. Supreme Court on Trump's claim to absolute presidential immunity in his federal election interference trial. Joining me now is Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney, MSNBC legal analyst, and professor at the University of Alabama School of Law, and Eugene Robinson, columnist at The Washington Post and MSNBC political analyst. You're at a disadvantage, my friend Joyce. I'm going to go to you first. How can it be that Aileen Cannon, as the person who is causing the delays by not ruling on things, can say there are too many delays to do this trial?
So this is one of the frustrations of being a federal prosecutor, even of being a lawyer. Occasionally you have judges like this who, whether they're hostile to a case or just have an overcrowded docket, they slow your case down to a point that seems unreasonable to you. The problem is that when that happens in an ordinary case, there's not the ticking deadline of an election. And a defendant like Donald Trump, who might have the proclivity to suspend all prosecution and any prospect of accountability if he wins the election. So in this case, it makes it particularly difficult to watch this happen.
If you're Jack Smith, do you try to somehow appeal it to the 11th Circuit and get her booted?
You know, the best hook that Jack Smith has for an appeal would be if Judge Cannon were to make rulings that he didn't like when it comes to whether Donald Trump can use classified information at trial. He's got a right to appeal those. Of course, we're in that pre-trial phase where the government needs a special hook to take an interlocutory appeal. Most sorts of issues have to wait until afterwards. So I think what Jack Smith has been waiting for has been these rulings on the classified information issue.
She's never going to rule.
And that is one of the issues. Right. She's suspended that this week. Those responses were due this week. Out of the blue, she gave Trump a continuance. And so for Jack Smith, I suspect he's now regretting the fact that he did not try to recuse her early on when he could have.
As the great Lawrence O'Donnell says, Eugene, the bribe is implied. She wants to be on the Supreme Court. She thinks she can get on if Donald Trump wins. She's going to kill this case. It's a catch and kill, as one might say.
I know, but
in the New York
Aileen Cannon on the Supreme Court, come on. I mean, you know, I know.
It's Trump.
I know.
She's done him favors.
Look, I know. I shouldn't put anything beyond the
She has about as much experience as Amy Coney Barrett.
Well, yeah, but Amy Coney Barrett's a lot smarter than Aileen Cannon. I mean, but look, this is an illustration of when a case goes before a federal judge. Federal judges have enormous power. The federal judge is in charge of that case. And so this story, that this case will not come to trial before the election, this story was written the day that the case was assigned to Judge Aileen Cannon. And it was.
Well, the bottom line is, and we were talking about this in the break, I'm just going to bring it onto the air. The thing is, when Alvin Bragg first filed his case, there was a lot of mockery of the case. There was a lot of snidey about the case. That case makes no sense. It's why bring it? It doesn't. It turns out it is the case. It is the only case upon which people can now judge whether Donald Trump is a criminal.
Exactly. This is the one case in which Donald Trump is being held accountable before the election. Period. Full stop. The others are not going to make it to trial. And certainly not going to make it to verdict. It's not going to happen. And Alvin Bragg, he was, you know, people were dogging him and this is a weak case, or this shouldn't go first, or whatever. Well, this is going only. Right? This is the only one. He offered to step back. He said, if a federal case, if one of those federal cases is ready to go, or Georgia is ready to go
first.
I'll wait. I'll take it off my calendar and push it back. You know, after you. But it turns out he is the only one who is prepared to go, and in fact is going, because Donald Trump is sitting in the courtroom every day.
And there's a sense, Joyce, in which the people of the United States, these cases are the people versus Donald Trump, New York versus Donald Trump. There is a lack of justice implied in this. The American people have a right to know whether the person they're electing is a felon, stole classified documents, or committed crimes in trying to wage a coup. We are being denied that. And I have to say, the one way in which I think New York has failed us is that we're being denied the opportunity to watch that trial. We only can read transcripts of it afterwards to the limits that we can, because they release the transcripts at like 10 o'clock at night. And so we're being literally forced to make decisions politically without the judicial branch doing its job. This seems to me to be an outrage. What do you think?
You know, when we talk about Speedy Trial Right Acts, and this has come up in a couple of the cases, Jack Smith has said Speedy Trial Act rights don't belong just to the defendant. They also belong by statute and our tradition of law to the people. The people have a right to have a speedy trial. And if that right means anything, it means that in a case involving a former president accused of interfering with an election who is running for office again, the judges should have bent over backwards to try to bring these cases to trial. Look, it's not entirely on the judges. There are complicated legal issues. Judge Chutkan, I think, did everything she could to move her case forward. Now it's in the hands of the Supreme Court. But Judge Cannon, I think, very much to the contrary, has done everything she could do to keep that case, which is incredibly important. It involves not only mishandling classified documents, but this long history of obstruction of justice. And she has bent over backwards to prevent that case from going to trial.
One might surmise, Eugene, that the judicial branch is conspiring to make Donald Trump president again.
One might surmise that, and one might be right. One, we can ask them. And,
I mean, there are 6 members of the Supreme Court who are.
Well,
for
exactly.
Sure, clearly.
So, look, did you think the Supreme Court was going to,
no, we know who Clarence is.
Tough on Donald? No. I mean, they're going to, and the Supreme Court can say, look, we're going through kind of our regular order. We've actually speeded up a bit in terms of the way we usually consider cases. We didn't have to consider this until the next term.
But I mean, the question that I think that leaves for us is the dangers to our democracy now include our own judiciary. And it includes parts of the courts. It includes Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas and Aileen Cannon. And people like Jack Smith are valiantly trying to do the right thing, but they follow the rules. The other side does not.
Yeah, well, look, our system does have checks and balances, right? But the ultimate check and balance is the voter. That's us. And so it is on us. It has always been on us. The judiciary was not going to bail us out in November. We're going to have to bail ourselves out.
Indeed. Joyce Vance, Eugene Robinson, thank you both very much. And